Sober Island Oysters, located on the brackish waters of Sober Island. Family operated and producing high-quality oysters since 2008. Known for their green outer shell and salty flavor. Hand-harvested, graded, and processed on-site for the highest quality assurance. A staple feature at private and public events, Sober Island Oysters caters to oyster lovers across Canada and soon worldwide. Sober Island Oysters is a family-run aquaculture farm growing eastern oysters in Sheet Harbour, Nova Scotia. Owned by Trevor and Michelle Monroe, the operation at Sober Island is a small team consisting of 4 full-time staff, 2 part-time staff, and seasonal workers hired to help during the harvest season in the fall. These first-generation farmers seized the opportunity to create an oyster farm in 2005 after finding and collecting wild oysters in the brackish waters surrounding their home. Prior to 1993, the Sober Island Pond was a closed body of water completely detached from the ocean. Shortly after this barrier was broken, salination of the water allowed for marine life to cultivate and wild oysters to settle in the mid-2000s. The Monroes took advantage of this, gaining a lease to farm oysters in 2008. Their farm now operates using both floating bag and cage oyster cultures. The Monroes cultivate 3 to 4 million oysters in 5 hectares of secluded seawater on the eastern shore of Nova Scotia. While most oyster farms are selected for their location, it's more as if the team at Sober Island was selected to be oyster farmers. Sober Island is unique in that the surrounding water has a salinity of roughly 29 parts per thousand, creating the ideal condition for oysters to thrive. With any lower salinity, there exists a higher risk of bacterial growth amongst the oysters. With any higher salinity, there would be a lack of algal growth that gives Sober Island oysters their claim to fame, their green exterior. The algal growth is due to their method of culturing, whereby using submerged floating bags keeps the oysters in a perfect area of the photic zone.
Yeah, our farms, it's just unique because it's all just nature. Like we have all different forms of nature here all the time.
Husbandry operations at Sober Island Oysters consists of 2 stages. The operations occurring in the seed farm, which provides spat to the Sober Island team, and the grow-out stage occurring in the brackish waters of Sober Island. While there are no eastern oyster hatcheries or seed farms in Nova Scotia, those in other regions of Atlantic Canada operate using standardized processes. Water temperatures in these facilities are constantly monitored, as a notable change in temperature is likely to induce spawning from adult oysters. Technicians will review a water sample under a microscope, searching for trochophore larvae. At this stage, the oysters are non-feeding, free-swimming plankton that move using cilia on the outer edge of their shell. The oyster will remain in this stage for 24 to 48 hours before becoming a veliger larva. Approximately 14 days after spawning, the oyster will develop an eye spot, which it will use in combination with the light source to orient itself in the water column. This is important as around the same time, a petty veliger oyster will settle on a substrate. In most cases, this will be a bed of calcium carbonate. In their natural environment, oysters will often attach on the shells of other oysters, creating oyster reefs. In order to attach, the oyster will secrete an organic cement from a specialized gland which fuses the oyster in place. This only occurs once in the oyster's life, preventing any fusing in later farmed growth. After the oysters have settled, they will grow to a macroscopic size, referred to as spat, have hardened shells, and will be ready for collecting. At this time, oyster spat are still small, ranging anywhere from 2 to 25 millimeters, meaning they will need to grow first in specialized trays. Spat oysters at this stage of maturation are often referred to as seed, as this is the product that will be sold to oyster growers. After growth in the trays, oysters will be large enough to continue grow out in the floating bags until reaching adulthood. Sober Island Oysters purchases between 500,000 to 1 million wild seed from Bouctouche, New Brunswick to cultivate at their farm. Oysters begin growth in floating bags attached to cages, which start at a density of approximately 4 liters of oysters. This will double throughout the summer and require densifying each year. 6 bags can attach to a cage, and this is where oysters begin to grow for 2 to 3 years. Oyster bags are flipped every 15 days during the summer, which allows for better oyster growth and reduces biofouling. As the oysters grow, they are graded to differentiate between age and size. Grading occurs around the 2nd year of growth, and oysters of different grades are often mixed. The last 3 years of growth before harvest occurs in floating bags located at the water's surface to keep their green color. After about 5 to 6 years of growth, it's harvest time, and the Sober Island team gathers oysters by hand from their 24-foot flat-bottom boat. Fitted with a hydraulic lift, these boats are equipped to lift oyster cages on site. After harvest, the oysters are cleaned using only natural conditions of rain and wind.
And then when we bring them to shore every year, that's when we'll lay them out and just let the air and rain really, we don't ever wash them with a pressure washer.
They are then tumbled to create a classic teardrop shape. The team at Sober Island prides themselves on the natural flavor of their oysters. Because they are grown in a unique and natural setting, the taste of their oysters is that of high salinity and earthiness, with hints of seaweed. Sober Island Oysters provides their oysters to chefs and restaurants across Canada and participates frequently in catering events.
We're known for direct to restaurant chefs, and since we started, 90% of our oysters went to relationships that we knew with chefs, right from Ontario down east.
For those located in Halifax, Sober Island oysters are featured at Press Gang Restaurant and Oyster Bar and are a popular feature of the Halifax Oyster Festival. Although their farm currently only ships to chefs and restaurants in Canada, a Canadian Food Inspection Agency certification is pending to allow shipments worldwide. Since 2013, the team has been active with their traveling oyster bar, making appearances at both public and privately catered events.
It all begun with the catering side. We just started a little traveling oyster bar for corporate functions or private parties, and that kind of kicked off our oyster on the market back in 2013.
Not only does the farm provide oysters directly to chefs and restaurants, they also offer a unique oyster eating experience for visitors on their farm. Small or large groups receive a personal tour from someone on the farm and can take the boat out to harvest their own oysters firsthand. Groups can shuck their catch on site and enjoy their oysters at a cookout event. Sober Island Oysters is happy to open their doors to nearby schools, repeatedly offering tours to the NSCC Culinary class and the Dalhousie University Field Aquaculture class.
Just coming back, shucking their own oysters, or us shucking and cooking with oysters. Chefs come down and do whatever we can do down here just to kind of promote the farm and a good oyster eating experience.
In partnership with Dalhousie University, students Ramon Filguera and Laura Steves researched the behavior and eating activities of the oysters at Sober Island following Hurricane Dorian. Here we can see the magnets are glued to the oyster's shells to determine how open they are. In their lab, water is pumped from the Sober Island pond through a pipe system and into the oyster chambers. Water passes over the oysters in a feeding experiment to determine what types of planktonic organisms the oysters are consuming. And a water filtration system keeps the researchers up to date on what's in the water and what isn't. Because Sober Island Oysters is located in a fairly privatized area, challenges on the farm are mostly due to weather damage. Differing weather patterns highlights the importance of hard work through maintenance and protecting farm equipment.
The weather since we started this farm 12 years ago, and compared to the storms and the wind we're getting now, has been one of our biggest challenges. Every year, it's different things are happening to the farm that we're trying to prevent in that year from the previous year. But it's just Mother Nature keeps changing up, and storms are stronger, and that's our biggest challenge.
After the recent touchdown of Hurricane Dorian in Nova Scotia, the team at Sober Island was forced to put oyster sales on hold as many washed ashore and the farm was left with broken lines and equipment. Being in a small community and having built strong relationships with those close to them, the team was able to recruit help in returning things back to normal. As the oyster market in Nova Scotia slowly emerges, Sober Island Oysters has already made their mark on the industry as a family-operated farm. With a distinguished catering business, the Monroe family attracts visitors from all places to enjoy their oysters and experience a taste of Sober Island itself. Located near the largest city in Atlantic Canada, the farm gains a unique edge through their agro-tourism, catering, and traveling oyster bar pursuits. The Monroe family is passionate about growing and providing oysters in their community and are grateful for the opportunity to educate others as they did themselves. The future of Sober Island Oysters will focus on these aspects and continue to build lifelong relationships with chefs across the country.
I think we're all very proud of it for being a first-generation oyster farmer and jumping right in, I guess, and doing what we did. No, it means a lot. We love it. I imagine we'll be growing oysters for a long time.
Sober Island Oysters can be contacted through their website or Facebook page to book a private tour and have them featured in a catering event near you. Be sure to follow their social media for more updates on Sober Island Oysters.